We've finally gotten a full look at Rise of the Floodborn's new starter decks, and they are packed with flavor and new cards.
So if you're thinking of picking up one of these starter decks, let's take a look at their playstyles, contents, and drawbacks. Even though we just got these deck lists, several publications received copies of these decks in advance and had a chance to playtest them and give us some detailed reviews. So this video relies heavily on 3 sources: Eric Switzer's article in the Gamer website, Adam Pott's article on TechRaptor, and Charlie Hall's article on Polygon. The links are below.
First up is Tactical Teamwork, the Amber Sapphire deck. And we have to start by mentioning the dwarves. This deck is full of them, 17 in total, nearly a third of the deck. Luckily, they all work together. The goal with the dwarves? Get as many of them on the board as possible and go wide. And we have to mention the art. Artist Kendall Hale had the idea to make all of the dwarves connect into one giant piece. And wow, it is so stunning when they're all together. We could mention all the dwarves' abilities, but it is suffice to say that they augment each other and you should just get them all on the board.
When we say they work together, what they're generally doing is augmenting each other's strength or reducing the strength of your opponent's characters, helping you get around that pesky resist in your opponent's steel deck. There are a few other cards that help with this go-wide strategy, including several Gastons and LeFou Bumbler, whose first chapter ability finally pays off, allowing you to get this 2-lore character on the board cheaply, to get you a little closer to victory. Lastly, Christopher Robin can get you some bonus lore when he readies, ensuring your opponent has to deal with your board after you quest.
Oh, and we have to mention Gaston Baritone Bully, which is our first villain with the Sing ability, and the art is just fabulous. In a matchup against the other starter, Might and Magic, manipulating your characters and your opponent's characters' strengths with cards like Grumpy, Dopey, and Painting the Roses Red will be important to helping overcome steel resist characters. The Queen, Commanding Presence, can also facilitate efficient challenges. However, there's only one in this deck. It really feels like she makes a difference against resist characters, so if you see her in your opening hand, we recommend not mulliganing her away. Especially if you see her shift target, the 1-cost Queen, Royal Monarch, of which there are 3.
This deck also has another line of play: items. There are several cheap items in the deck, including Popsicle, Fang Crossbow, and Gumbo Pot. These are designed to work with other Sapphire cards like Hiram Flabbersham, Judy Hopps, and Launch. The items are useful, but according to Eric Switzer, they just don't quite click completely in this deck, partially for a reason we'll explain in a second. Okay, we'll explain it now. This deck is missing Nick Wilde to work with the Popsicle, robbing it of some easy synergy. Unlike the other starter, this deck does have some card draw, with Gaston, Popsicle's cantrip effect, and Judy Hopps. It can also use its one Winnie the Pooh to ramp a bit, helping you to go wide faster.
Overall, the key with this deck is really leveraging the go-wide strategy. You should be getting as many dwarves in play as possible, and leveraging them and your other cards to manipulate character strength, maintaining your board state, and slowly accruing lore. According to TechRadar, it does take a while for this deck to get going, generally hitting its stride mid-game, so it's not an aggro or an aggressive deck.
If you're playing in an event that allows you to modify your deck with any booster pack cards, or if you're playing at home and just want to make some changes, there's a few things we recommend doing immediately. First, we'll echo what Eric Switzer of The Gamer pointed out, that you'll want to get Snow White, Unexpected Houseguest, and Nick Wilde in this deck as soon as possible. Nick synergizes well with Popsicle, and Snow White makes your dwarves cheaper. Getting them into your deck will help a lot. To be honest, I have no idea why Snow White, Unexpected Houseguest isn't in this deck.
Yeah.
I can only guess that it made the deck too powerful, and so they pulled it out. Doesn't make sense. The second Rise of the Floodborn starter deck, Might and Magic, is built around 2 things: Resist, which is the Might, and Bounce, which is the Magic. Resist is a new keyword that makes your characters ignore a specified amount of damage, making them more difficult for your opponents to banish. They can make your opponent's life difficult. Resist characters will help you maintain control while you work your Bounce combos. Bounce is a slang term for the effect that returns cards to you or your opponent's hands. And in this deck, there's a lot of cards that do that.
The magic in this deck revolves around bouncing things. In this deck, you get to play out the Wizard's Duel from the Sword and the Stone. There are several forms of Merlin and Madame Mim that require you to return a character to your hand when played, as if shape-shifting. In return for bouncing one of your characters, you can end up with a stronger character in play, and also with a beneficial effect from one or both of the characters that enter or leave play. For example, Goat Merlin gives you lore when he enters and leaves play. Getting this bounce energy going is an important part of this deck.
This deck is a little more control-y than tactical teamwork, and Eric Switzer points out that it may take a little bit to figure out. If you're playing it, leverage your resist characters for board control. Eric mentioned Mouse Armor specifically as a card worth paying attention to as well. This adorable suit of armor gives your characters resist until the start of your next turn, doing two things. First, it helps you make efficient trades during your turn. Second, it protects that character from your opponent's counterattack until the start of your next turn. This card seems to be just good. Also, Tiana with her resist 2 seems super hard to remove. Having her hit the board on turn 4 is just good. Keep her in any opening hand.
It is super important to leverage resist, as you'll generally have fewer characters on board. Leveraging your Wizard's Duel characters to gain small advantages as they enter and leave play. Efficiency is super important in this deck, as it has limited card draw, with only 3 copies of Kuzco Wanted Llama, drawing you cards when he is banished. But it does cap out at 4-cost cards, with the exception of 1 copy of Kronk Junior Chipmunk at 6. So be efficient with your ink. There's really no need to ink more than necessary. You may not need more than 4 or 5 ink in total. If you're able to add cards to this deck, adding Hercules, Divine Hero, or Cinderella, Stout-Hearted would be excellent. They fit the theme of the deck and have shift targets available.
Speaking of efficiency, Hei Persistent Presence is a card that does work in this deck. Hei is a 2-cost 2/1 with 1 lore. Whenever he is banished in a challenge, he returns to your hand. Being able to use this card again and again to affect your opponent's board is helpful in a deck with limited card draw. According to people who have played these decks, they're fairly evenly matched when the players know what they're doing.
To us, these decks are huge flavor wins. We always talk about how important it is in TCGs to allow players to feel like they're playing out a story, and these decks do exactly that.
This also helps new players understand what the deck is supposed to do. For the Dwarves, it's get a bunch of them on the board and have them all work together to accomplish your goals, and for Might and Magic, it's playing out the Sorcerer's Duel by bouncing your characters up and down. It makes perfect sense.
So that's it. What are your thoughts and questions about these decks? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Sign off catchphrase.